Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media.
Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the quiet hills of Job, West Virginia. Nestled in the Appalachian Mountains, spring brings mild weather and vibrant life to the forest. The landscape is dense with towering oak, maple, and hemlock trees, their leaves freshly green as they emerge from winter's slumber. Beneath the canopy, mountain laurel and rhododendron bushes bloom, their flowers dotting the undergrowth in pinks and whites. Wild blackberry bushes sprawl across the forest floor, attracting wildlife, from deer to black bears. The Porterfield family, living in this rural setting, was familiar with the beauty and danger that the wilderness held. It was on May 19, 1901, that their 3 children, Mary, age 3, Willie, age 5, and Henry, age 7, set out to gather flowers in the woods near their home, unaware of the tragic event that would unfold. The Appalachian region where Job is located is one of the oldest mountain ranges in the world, with a rich biodiversity. The forest surrounding the Porterfield home was filled with wildlife, deer, foxes, birds of prey, and of course, black bears. The lush undergrowth provided ample cover for animals to remain unseen by humans until they were close. Streams and rivers cut through the landscape, providing not only sustenance for the wildlife, but also natural pathways utilized by bears and children. In the early 1900s, the black bear population in West Virginia was relatively stable. Black bears were native to the region and had been present a long time before settlers arrived. The state's dense forest provided an ideal habitat with plenty of food sources and space to roam. Bear populations were estimated to be in the tens of thousands at the time, although no formal tracking existed until much later. Job, West Virginia is still a rural community, and in 1901, the area was home to very few families, with each household covering several acres of land. This low human population density meant that bear encounters, while not unheard of, were infrequent and often nonviolent. The Porterfield family was well known in the small, close-knit community of Job, a town that relied heavily on logging and farming to sustain its residents. The rugged mountainous terrain was both beautiful and perilous. Families like the Porterfields often coexisted with wildlife, and encounters with bears, though usually benign, were not uncommon. Yet in 1901, the community had never experienced a bear attack of such ferocity. In May, the forest would have been full of life, with new growth emerging after the winter. Black bears, which are omnivores, would have been foraging for food as they emerged from hibernation. Bears often scavenge for berries, roots, and small animals, but they're also opportunistic and will consume whatever food they come across. Though not typically aggressive, a bear could easily feel threatened by a sudden encounter with humans, or could be drawn closer to human activity by the smell of food. Mary, Willie, and Henry were typical children of the time, raised with an appreciation for nature and a sense of independence. They spent much of their time outdoors, exploring the hills and valleys near their home. On that fateful day in May, the children left the house to gather wildflowers, as they often did, laughing and playing as they wandered further from their home. With no adults accompanying them and no means of protection, they were vulnerable to the dangers that lurked in the dense forest. As the children collected their flowers, they were unaware of the danger approaching. Black bears in the Appalachian region are typically shy and avoid human contact, but under certain circumstances, they can become aggressive. It is unclear what provoked the bear to attack the Porterfield children. It may have been surprised by their presence, or possibly hungry. Whatever the reason, the attack was swift and brutal. When the children failed to return home by dusk, their parents became alarmed. A search party was quickly formed, comprised of neighbors and family friends. The search lasted through the night and into the early hours of the morning. It wasn't until the next day that the remains of the children were found, their bodies showing clear signs of a bear attack, and each child had been partially consumed. The tragic discovery shocked the entire community, and the search party, now grief-stricken, turned its attention to finding the bear responsible. At the turn of the 20th century, life in rural West Virginia was marked by isolation and a strong reliance on community. Towns like Job were small, and most families lived miles apart. People depended on each other for survival in emergencies, and the Porterfield tragedy was no exception. When the word of the missing children spread, the town rallied to organize such efforts, with men from surrounding homesteads and farms joining the search party. The search party that found the children's remains did not stop until the bear responsible for the attack was tracked down and killed. The bear, an adult male in good condition, was shot within a few miles of where the children's bodies were discovered. No cubs or other signs of stress, such as an injury or scarcity of food, were found near the bear, making the attack all the more perplexing. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, link below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes, and the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. The tragedy left the Porterfield family devastated and sent shockwaves through the community, changing the way families in Job interacted with the wilderness around them. Black bears are known to be solitary and elusive animals. They generally avoid humans, but there are several reasons a bear might attack. In some cases, a bear may feel threatened if it is surprised, especially if cubs are nearby. In other instances, a bear may be food-stressed or sick, leading it to act more aggressively. In the early 1900s, there was limited understanding of bear behavior, and many attacks were attributed to random chance. Today, we know that bear attacks are often preventable through proper precautions and education. However, in rural areas like Job, there was little access to this kind of knowledge, and the communities relied on their own experiences and traditions to stay safe. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. What factors might have led this black bear to attack the children, despite the lack of any apparent threat? Could this tragedy have been prevented if the children had stayed closer to home, or if they had been better educated about the dangers of bears? What can we learn from this tragedy that applies to modern interactions between humans and wildlife? I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the Blue Ridge Parkway near Asheville, North Carolina. The parkway winds for 469 miles through parts of Virginia and North Carolina, connecting Shenandoah National Park to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Over 13 million visitors annually flock to see the autumn foliage. The elevation here ranges from sea level to over 6,000 feet high at Mount Pisgah. The entire parkway is a bear sanctuary, meaning there is no hunting season within its boundaries. In recent years, the bear population has been bumping into more and more people, and some of these altercations don't end well. The authorities have euthanized 4 bears in recent years due to them presenting a threat to human beings. The mountainsides of the parkway are packed with oak and hickory trees, tulip and buckeye trees, as well as ash trees. Evergreens here include fir and spruce trees. Common animals here include white-tailed deer and wild turkeys, which are pursued by bobcats, coyotes, and black bears. Near Asheville is where the Folk Arts Center is, near Haw Creek. The grassy areas near the center are a favorite picnic area for locals and visitors alike. On the evening of Wednesday, September 29th, 2021, a couple, whom we'll refer to as Bill and Cindy, were enjoying each other's company while picnicking. Bill and Cindy lived near Asheville, and along with them they brought their dog, whom we'll call Sarge, who was a German Shepherd mixed breed. Sarge demonstrated the alert and protective hallmarks of the breed, and was a great companion on their adventures. Now, park rules require any dog must be on a 6-foot leash, or the owners face a $50 fine, but Sarge was allowed to wander the area off-leash. While the couple were eating their meal, Sarge began to bark, but this wasn't his normal, playful bark. It was a determined and alarmed bark that drew Bill and Cindy's full attention. As they searched for the source of Sarge's angst, a medium-sized black bear came into view. It was clearly aggravated by Sarge's presence, and even more so by his barking. Bill and Cindy knew they had to intervene and immediately called for Sarge to return to them, and as he did, the bear followed him right to the couple. Now this is where the bear's intentions behind its actions have to be discussed. The bear had plenty of directions in which to flee, but it took a direct route toward Bill and Cindy. The aggressive behavior of the bear caught Bill and Cindy off guard, and they weren't sure how to react. As the bear began loping toward them, following Sarge, Bill and Cindy rose to their feet. They yelled at the bear, trying to scare it off, assuming it would turn and go back into the woods. Bill and Cindy's vehicle wasn't very far away, and they decided to make their way toward it as they backed away from the bear. The angry Bruin leapt toward Sarge, but Bill intervened and was gashed on his head from the bear's claws. He continually stepped between Cindy and the bear to ensure it didn't get a hold of her. With each step they took backward, the bear would lunge forward and bite and claw Bill. The more they retreated, the more enraged the bear seemed to get. It leapt toward Cindy and clawed her arm as she held Sarge's tether, and Bill ran interference. Continuing their retreat moved them closer to their vehicle, but each time they fought running, the bear would inflict painful gashes and bites on Bill. Upon reaching their vehicle, Bill and Cindy jumped inside and pulled Sarge in as well, but the bear wasn't satisfied with having injured them and chased them off. This strange event mired Bill and Cindy in a horror movie plot twist. The angry bear continually tried to enter their vehicle, pawing and biting at the windows. In its fervent attempt to get at the couple and their dog, the bear climbed on top of the car, searching for a way to get a hold of them. Locating his keys, Bill started the vehicle, and the trio fled from the bear. He drove himself and Cindy to nearby Mission Hospital. Cindy was treated for slashes from the bear's claws. Bill received treatment for bite and claw wounds to his arms, hands, and head. As he struggled to hold back the bear, his shoulder was also dislocated. Sarge was uninjured during the melee. Wildlife officers immediately set about investigating the causes and circumstances surrounding this bear attack. They swabbed the bear's blood and saliva from the couple's car to gather DNA for comparison to samples from any other bear they could catch in the area. Several large culvert traps were set out around the area to catch the bear before it could attack again. Over the next several days, the picnic area was under observation. The investigators knew that the bear didn't have an ear tag or radio collar, so it had no record of being a problem bear. Catching it would answer a lot of questions, and it was determined it would need to be euthanized and examined. All efforts to find the bear were fruitless, and the search was eventually abandoned. Based on information provided by the couple, authorities determined the bear was young but not a yearling. They didn't have enough information to determine its sex, but estimated it to be around 200 pounds in body weight. The bear may have been responding to the scent of food brought by the picnickers, but no cubs were observed in the area. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes. And the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. North Carolina is home to an estimated bear population of 7,000 to 8,000 black bears over its 48,607 square miles. This is a bear density of 1 bear for every 6 square miles. Black bears in North Carolina are the largest black bears in the world, posting a 50 to 100 pound larger average size. There's never been an unprovoked attack on a human being by a black bear in North Carolina. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Would you consider bringing along bear spray or a firearm on your next picnic? Did Sarge instigate the bear attack, or did he prevent it from being worse than it was? Why did this bear continue its attack on the victims instead of fleeing? The next time you're enjoying a charcuterie board, will you be glancing around to make sure there isn't a bear sneaking up on you? I'll be eating my cheese and meat inside from now on. I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's story takes us to the beautiful but wild forests of Trempealeau County, Wisconsin. This area is known for its dense woodlands, rolling hills, and abundant wildlife. The region's forests are dominated by oak, maple, and pine trees, with an understory rich in dogwood shrubs, hazelnut bushes, and wild raspberry plants. These woodlands provide a perfect habitat for a variety of wildlife, including white-tailed deer, coyotes, wild turkeys, and dangerous black bears. The climate here features cold winters and warm, humid summers, making it an ideal setting for a wide range of plant and animal life. It's in this environment that Dalton Roach, an avid outdoorsman and professional baseball player, faced a harrowing and nearly deadly encounter with one of nature's most powerful predators. Dalton, a 25-year-old from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, was no stranger to adventure. When he wasn't playing professional baseball for the St. Louis Cardinals AA affiliate in Springfield, Missouri, Roach could often be found outdoors, hunting deer, or enjoying the natural beauty of his home state. In the fall of October 2021, Roach was eager to take part in another hunting trip, setting out into the woods of Trempealeau County for what he believed would be a routine deer hunt. Little did he know that this outing would turn into an encounter he would never forget. With his bow in hand, Roach climbed into the tree stand, located about 20 feet above the ground, waiting patiently for the time to pass and deer 30 to arrive. The thick forest canopy around him was quiet and serene. Roach had been deer hunting many times before, but this trip would be anything but routine and enjoyable for the young sportsman. As the day progressed, Roach noticed a dark shadow filtering through the forest approaching him. Much to his surprise and excitement, a black bear, estimated to weigh 250 to 300 pounds, appeared and began wandering through the woods, seemingly unaware of Roach's presence. The bear moved slowly, seemingly at ease, as it explored the forest floor, probably searching for acorns. Roach, fascinated by the bear, decided to take out his cell phone and record the spectacle. After all, seeing a black bear in the wild was a rare experience for him. The bear continued to meander through the woods, moving closer to the tree where Roach was perched. The bear showed no signs of aggression, and at first, Roach felt no immediate danger. However, that changed when the bear veered directly toward his tree stand. As the bear approached, Roach put his cell phone away, sensing that the situation was becoming more serious. He could hear the distinct sound of the bear's claws scratching the tree bark as it began climbing the tree. Roach craned his neck to see what it was up to, but couldn't get a good view of the bear. Before he could react, the bear was directly beneath him, scaling the tree with surprising speed. Roach remained still, hoping that the bear would climb back down, but to his shock, the bear continued its ascent. Within moments, Roach could feel the bear's breath on his back. The bear reached the tree stand platform and placed a massive paw on Roach's lap and pressing into his thigh as it examined him from behind. Peering at the bear from the corner of his eye, from only inches away, the hunter's brain was spinning as an overload of adrenaline poured into his bloodstream. He could see the bear dip its head and felt a jolt of pain flash through his body as the bear drove its teeth through the flesh in the middle of his back. At that moment, Roach's survival instincts kicked in. He knew he couldn't do anything other than bluff the bear at this point. Deciding to act, Roach turned around on the hunting stand and made himself appear as large as possible, raising his arms wide and shouting at the bear. Startled by Roach's sudden movement, the predator hesitated and leaned back, seemingly confused by the unexpected reaction. Roach continued to yell, trying to intimidate the bear, and to his immense relief, the bear began to climb back down the tree. However, the danger was far from over. After descending, the bear circled the base of the tree, watching Roach with an intense gaze. It seemed to be thinking of climbing up again, and then rethinking the option. Though it appeared the bear had retreated, Roach knew that black bears could be unpredictable, and the bear's lingering presence made him uneasy as blood trickled down his back from the gaping wounds. In a moment of quick thinking, Roach nocked an arrow, his only means of defense. With no bear spray or firearm at his disposal, he knew that his bow was his last line of protection, should the bear attack again. As the two stared each other down, Roach silently debated to himself if he should shoot the bear or wait to see if it leaves. He feared angering the bear might bring a renewed attack, so he waited for it to make another move toward him. Roach decided to call a friend for assistance, asking them to drive their truck as close as possible to his location, knowing that his best chance of escape was to avoid being in the woods after dark. After several tense minutes, the bear began to slowly meander back into the timber, disappearing from sight. Once he was sure the bear was gone, Roach climbed down from the tree and made his way back to his truck, grateful to have survived the encounter with only minor injuries. The bow hunter sought and received medical treatment, which included cleaning the puncture wounds and administering a tetanus shot, as well as preventative rabies injections to ensure that there were no complications from the attack. Despite the trauma, Roach remained optimistic, expressing relief that the encounter hadn't been more serious. "I'm pretty fortunate that it's not some big nasty bite that took off half of my back," Roach said afterward. He described the area around the bite as tender, but he knew that it could have been much worse. In Wisconsin, there are an estimated 24,000 black bears, and the state is divided into several hunting zones. Wisconsin's bear hunting season runs from September to October, with hunters using both dogs and bait in designated areas. While bear encounters are not uncommon in the state, attacks like roaches remain rare, especially ones involving such close proximity. The bear attack was chalked up to the bear being curious more than anything else by authorities. It wasn't defending an obvious food cache, and no cubs were seen in the vicinity. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes, plus pictures, and the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. Wisconsin is home to one of the largest black bear populations in the United States, with bears primarily inhabiting the northern part of the state. The population of black bears is estimated to be around 24,000, and the state spans an area of approximately 65,000 square miles. This puts the bear density at roughly 1 bear per 3 square miles. In the last decade, there have been only a handful of recorded bear attacks in the state, with the majority of encounters being non-lethal. However, as human activity encroaches on bear habitats, and bear populations increase, the likelihood of such encounters increases. Dalton Roach's terrifying encounter with a black bear serves as a reminder that even experienced hunters can find themselves in life-threatening situations in the wilderness. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Could Dalton Roach's encounter have ended differently if he'd been carrying bear spray or a firearm? Would these tools have prevented the attack or made it safer for him to escape? What drove the bear to climb the tree and bite Roach? Was it curiosity, hunger, or simply an unusual behavioral response? I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. In today's episode, we venture deep into the rugged wilderness of Montana's Gallatin Range, near an area called Hidden Lakes. This range, part of the larger Rocky Mountain system, stretches from Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming up into Montana, with its towering peaks and dense forests providing a habitat for an array of wildlife, including grizzly bears. This remote region of the Custer-Gallatin National Forest is well known for its rugged beauty, attracting outdoor enthusiasts, hunters, and adventurers alike. The Gallatin Range is part of a thriving ecosystem that supports not only grizzly bears, but also a wide variety of other wildlife. The forest is dense with lodgepole pine, Douglas fir, and Engelmann spruce, trees that provide shelter and food for animals like moose, elk, and deer. The predators here include bobcats, black bears, coyotes, cougars, wolves, and grizzly bears. Montana's backcountry is characterized by a cold, temperate climate with long winters and short, mild summers. Snow can fall as early as September in the higher elevations, and by October, temperatures are already dropping significantly. This is a critical time of year for grizzly bears, as they must consume enough food to survive the long winter months in hibernation. The shortening days and colder temperatures signal to the bears that it's time to bulk up, which leads them to increase their activity as they search for calorie-rich food sources. In the fall, the bears feast on an array of berries, including huckleberries and service berries, as well as roots and nuts that help sustain them through hibernation. This seasonal pattern also aligns with hunting season, putting hunters and bears on a collision course. Elk calls, animal scents, and even the sound of a hunter moving through the brush can attract bears looking for an easy meal. Game is plentiful and hunting productive, which makes it a popular spot for hunters. However, where there are elk, there are often predators. Grizzly bears are known to scavenge from hunter kills, and the scent of a freshly killed elk or deer can attract bears from miles away. Hunters are advised to be particularly cautious when field dressing game, as leaving a carcass unattended can quickly lead to a dangerous situation. Fall is a particularly active time for grizzlies in Montana, as they enter a state of hyperphagia, a period in which bears consume vast amounts of food in preparation for winter hibernation. It is during this time that encounters between humans and bears tend to peak, as bears aggressively forage for anything that will help them survive the long winter. On the afternoon of October 5th, 2024, a hunter, whom we will call Tim, was tracking game in the backcountry of the Gallatin Range. He had risen early and aimed his efforts on a promising stand of timber he had been keeping an eye on. As Tim eased through the trees, carefully examining the ground for any sign of game, a dark shadow suddenly appeared in the periphery of his vision. Tim slowly turned his head, and his eyes focused on the most terrifying thing a hunter could imagine. A large sow grizzly and her 2 large cubs were standing only 40 yards or so away from the hunter. Now Tim knew he couldn't make any quick movements without attracting the sow's attention. He slowly tried to pull himself into the shadows just before the sow's head snapped in his direction. As soon as she made out his silhouette, the sow thundered toward Tim in a furious act of defense of herself and her cubs. Tim was no dummy when it came to hunting in grizzly country. I could find no source indicating what kind or caliber of pistol he carried, but as soon as the sow charged, he pulled his pistol out. Tim fired off a round in the sow's direction, and his aim was true, but not immediately fatal. The sow twisted and growled as the bullet burned its way through her flesh. Tim immediately turned and pulled himself into a tree and climbed as far as he could into its limbs. As the hunter clung to the tree limbs, the angry and wounded sow was growling and pacing beneath him. He hoped she would gather her cubs and depart, but seconds turned into minutes, and minutes turned into the better part of an hour without the grizzly leaving. She seemed hell-bent on getting at him and having a little revenge of her own. As the sow chuffed and growled beneath the tree, Tim decided he would try to use his cell phone to call for help. He pressed the button and the screen lit up as he searched the reception indicator. He didn't exactly have 5 bars of reception, but he had enough to contact 911 and tell authorities of his predicament. Responding swiftly, Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks and the Gallatin County Sheriff Search and Rescue teams deployed a helicopter to the hunter's location. Upon arrival, the FWP personnel found the wounded bear still near the tree where the hunter had sought refuge. The team safely landed the helicopter and, following standard procedures for human-bear conflicts, dispatched the injured grizzly. Concerned for the cubs' welfare, the officers made several passes in search of them, but were unable to find hide nor hair of them. They'd fled the scene after their mother was injured and would likely survive on their own given their age and size. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes, and the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. The hunter, despite his terrifying ordeal, was unharmed. He was extracted from the scene by a helicopter and transported to safety. His quick thinking, firearm, and ability to remain calm under pressure undoubtedly saved his life. This incident, while rare, underscores the importance of being prepared and aware when venturing into bear country. Montana has seen an increase in bear-human conflicts over the past few decades as the grizzly bear population rebounds, thanks to conservation efforts. The greater Yellowstone ecosystem, which includes parts of Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho, is home to one of the largest remaining populations of grizzly bears in the contiguous United States. With more bears roaming these wild areas, the likelihood of encounters with humans has increased, particularly during the fall hunting season. According to Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks, the state sees several bear attacks each year, though fatal encounters remain rare. Most attacks occur when bears are surprised by humans, often at close range. Bears with cubs are especially dangerous, as maternal instinct drives them to defend their young at all costs. Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks emphasizes the importance of carrying bear spray, especially for hunters who venture into bear territory. Bear spray is a non-lethal deterrent that has been proven highly effective in stopping charging bears, but critics say it has its limitations. It is weather dependent, meaning that cold temperatures and high winds can limit its efficacy, and ensuring you have time to discharge it properly is impossible. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Can a balance be struck between the safety of hunters and the existence of grizzlies in the backcountry? Would bear spray have changed the outcome of this attack? Do you think authorities need to kill all 3 bears since the cubs had witnessed the attack? I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the rugged and dense forests of Elk County, Pennsylvania. Winter comes fast and early here, and the late November chill had begun to settle over the landscape. Tall hemlock and oak trees stood as silent witnesses to the many creatures that roamed the wilderness, from white-tailed deer to the elusive black bear. The dense forests filled with oak, maple, and hemlock trees provide ample cover and food sources for the bears. Oak trees in particular produced acorns, a staple of the black bear's diet during the fall. As bears prepared for winter hibernation, they consumed large amounts of food, making the late fall season an active time for bear foraging. The understory of the forest was thick with mountain laurels, ferns, and blackberry bushes, which also contributed to the bear's diet. These plants, while seemingly insignificant, played a crucial role in the bear's survival by offering berries and roots throughout different seasons. Additionally, the streams and rivers running through Elk County provided a consistent water source for both the animals and the hunters who pursued them. The underbrush, thick with mountain laurel and ferns, was starting to wither as the winter approached, yet it still provided cover for both predators and prey. On November 24, 1906, a young hunter named John Dykes ventured into these woods, not knowing that his faithful encounter with a black bear would lead to tragedy. At the turn of the 20th century, black bears in Pennsylvania were relatively rare, but not unheard of. Pennsylvania's black bear population, though smaller than today, was significant, particularly in the vast wilderness areas like Elk County. In the early 1900s, black bears were still considered both a threat and a valuable resource for their pelts and meat. While most bears avoided human contact, hunters who ventured deep into bear territory sometimes faced dangerous encounters. During this period, hunting was not just a sport, but a necessity for many rural families who relied on game to survive the harsh winters. Bears were often seen as competitors for food sources, such as deer, and as a valuable commodity for their hides. As a result, many hunters, including young men like John Dykes, sought out bears despite the risks involved. However, without the modern safety measures and wildlife knowledge available today, hunters frequently underestimate the danger of approaching a wounded bear too soon. White-tailed deer, a common prey for hunters like Dykes, were abundant in the area, sharing the same habitats as black bears. The interaction between these species was significant, as bears would frequently scavenge from deer killed by other predators or hunters. While bears were primarily omnivores, they would not hesitate to take advantage of available meat, especially in the lead-up to hibernation. This overlap in food sources sometimes led to dangerous encounters between hunters and bears, as was the case with John Dykes. The 18-year-old was already a seasoned hunter by his young age, having grown up in a family that depended on hunting for both sustenance and trade. Born and raised in Elk County, Pennsylvania, Dykes was familiar with the wildlife that lived in the forest surrounding his home. He'd spent many hours tracking game, and he understood the risks involved in facing large animals like bears. However, on that fateful November day, his experience wasn't enough to prevent the fatal outcome. Equipped with his hunting rifle, Dykes set out with confidence, unaware that a dangerous mistake would cost him his life. As was common for hunters of the time, Dykes carried no other defensive weapons, assuming his skill with the rifle would be enough to keep him safe. On November 24, 1906, Dykes successfully shot and brought down a black bear while hunting in the remote woods of Elk County. Believing the bear to be dead, he began the process of skinning it, a common practice for hunters who use the animal's hide for trade or personal use. However, in an instant, the bear awoke, proving that it had not been fatally wounded. Before Dyke could react, the bear lashed out with its powerful claws, tearing off one of his arms in the process. Severely injured and unable to defend himself, Dyke was left helpless as the bear continued its attack. The bear, enraged and wounded, then killed him. It is unclear how long the attack lasted, but by the time Dyke was discovered, the gruesome scene made it clear that he had not survived. Bear attacks, especially during the fall, were more likely to occur when bears were foraging heavily to prepare for hibernation. Bears that had been wounded, like the one Dyke shot, were especially unpredictable. A sow with cubs, regardless of species, is always the most unpredictable and dangerous. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes, and the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. After John Dyke's body was discovered, a local search party tracked and killed the bear responsible for his attack. The bear was found to be in good health, with no signs of injury beyond the bullet wound inflicted by Dyke. This tragic incident left the local community in shock, and served as a grim reminder of the dangers of hunting bears alone in the wilderness. While bear attacks in Pennsylvania were rare, Dyke's death added to the folklore of the region, warning future hunters to respect the wild creatures they pursued. The tragic incident that claimed Dyke's life was a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of bears, particularly when they're injured. Reports of similar encounters throughout the state occasionally surfaced, but as hunting equipment and technologies improved over the years, such attacks became less common. After reviewing the facts surrounding Dyke's fatal bear attack, I'm left with a few questions for you. Could John Dyke's death have been prevented if more precautions were taken before approaching the bear? What advancements in hunting safety might have changed the outcome of this encounter? How can modern hunters learn from incidents like this to better prepare for dangerous encounters in the wild? I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.
Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the wild, untamed terrain of Yellowstone National Park, Wyoming, in the year 1916. Recently established in 1872, Yellowstone had few regulations involving interactions between grizzlies and human beings, and each was left to fend for themselves. The rugged beauty of Sylvan Pass stands as the east entrance to the park between Hoyt Peak and Top Notch Peak, both towering well over 10,000 feet high. With forests of pine, spruce, fir, and aspens, Yellowstone's diverse ecosystems are home to an array of wildlife, including bison, elk, deer, antelope, and moose. Predators here include bobcats, coyotes, cougars, black bears, wolverines, wolves, and grizzly bears. The early 20th century saw a rise in bear-human conflicts, as increased tourism and settlement in the park brought people into closer contact with the native wildlife. Bears were considered nuisances and threats, especially when they wandered too close to camps. The idea of bear management was still in its infancy, and dangerous encounters were sometimes met with extreme solutions. Sylvan Pass still serves as an essential route through the Absaroka Range when it isn't close by avalanches or snowfall. The road sits at over 8,200 feet high, so there are few months when snow is not possible. In the early 20th century, this region was even wilder than it is today, with fewer visitors and less human infrastructure, making encounters with large predators like grizzly bears even more common. Yellowstone, America's first national park, was already well known for its natural wonders, from geysers to vast forests. But it was also a place where wildlife ruled supreme. Grizzly bears especially were notorious for their power, size, and unpredictable behavior. As fall approached, these bears would have been preparing for hibernation, aggressively seeking out food sources to fatten up for the long winter ahead, and few items offering calories escaped their sensitive noses. In 1916, the grizzly bear population in Yellowstone was estimated to be between 200 and 300 bears. These apex predators roamed vast areas of the park, and while encounters with humans were not uncommon, fatal attacks were still relatively rare.
Yellowstone covers over 3,400 square miles, giving bears ample territory to roam, though areas around human settlements, camps, and trails saw more frequent bear activity due to the tantalizing scents arising from camp food and grain stores. On September 8, 1916, 61-year-old Frank Welch was trekking his way through the pass with a large load of oats and hay. The haul was destined for campers nearby, as fodder for their horses. He was an avid hunter and an experienced outdoorsman, familiar with the wilderness of Yellowstone, but that didn't mean Mother Nature didn't have a few more lessons to teach him. Early fall brings out the hungry in grizzlies, and this one was no different. They're trying to pack on fat for hibernation, and are driven by hyperphagia. That word hadn't been invented in Frank's day. He just knew they were hungry and apt to eat anything they came across. In recent years, grizzlies had developed a cantankerous and intolerant attitude toward the presence of humans appearing in their frontier. Given there were few, if any, game wardens or park rangers around to keep the peace, if you will, residents were left to their own devices when it came to protecting themselves from the grizzlies. Now, Frank didn't know it, but there was a big old hungry grizzly bear making his way through Sylvan Pass at the same time as him. This bear had been roaming from place to place, digging up rodents and dispatching entire berry patches of their few remaining fruits as he went. Once that grizz caught a whiff of Frank's oats at his camp, its mind was made up, and it wasn't good for Frank. Details are scant on just how the bear ambushed Frank, but the results were grim and nauseating to those who found him afterward. His camp was laid out in a way that allowed the bear to attack from cover, and poor old Frank never stood a chance, even though he packed a firearm. Bear spray was almost 100 years away from being invented, so his rifle would be all he had for defense next to his knife and luck, which he was apparently running short of. After his buddies assembled a search party for Frank and the missing oats, they wasted no time in tracking him down. Finding his corpse tattered and torn, they knew they had to dispatch this beastly Bruin before being battered themselves. Today, the possession and sale of dynamite is closely controlled, but in 1916, the town store handed them out like free samples at Costco. Invented about 50 years prior, area miners used it to open or close mine shafts, but what these bear avengers had in mind added one more use to its long list. Those crafty hunters rigged a big old surprise for that grizzly when he returned to Frank's camp and the oats it had fed upon. They stashed some sticks of dynamite beneath a bag of oats and trailed a long fuse away from it. Then they concealed themselves in the bushes, hoping they would remedy this problem bear. After a few hours, the grizz showed up and started munching on the oats it had killed Frank for. The fellows lit the end of that fuse and watched as it burned and sparkled its path toward the unsuspecting bear and its ill-gotten cash. As soon as the fuse disappeared beneath one of the bags of oats, an ear-shattering explosion sent the bear sailing into the air. Medium-rare bear bits pelted the ground around the men a few seconds afterward. Now rid of the man-killing grizzly, the men examined the bear's carcass to assess the damage done by the explosive. There wasn't much left to look at, and what was left wasn't worth the effort of burying. Unceremoniously, the men left the carcass to deliver the news of Frank's demise and their vengeance upon it. Given that the grizzly was blown to smithereens, there is no verifiable evidence of its size, health, or sex. We know it wasn't defending a food cache, and it was not surprised by Frank's appearance. There was no source indicating that cubs were a possible cause for the attack. Speaking of Cubs, our Cub Cheer membership on Patreon, link below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes, and the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. Today, the grizzly bear population in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem has rebounded to between 700 and 1,100 grizzly bears, thanks to conservation efforts. However, the risk of bear encounters remains, and modern management practices have drastically reduced the number of fatal attacks through better education, bear-proofing strategies, and regulated camping practices. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. With only 200 to 300 grizzlies thought to have roamed the park at the time, was it reasonable for Frank to fail to consider a run-in with a grizzly? What would today's bear safety measures, such as bear-proof containers and bear spray, have changed in this scenario? Will you look into getting yourself some dynamite next time you go to Yellowstone? Might not be a bad idea. I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. In today's episode, we explore the remote and rugged Admiralty Island in Alaska. Admiralty Island is known for its dense bear population, and the encounter that unfolded here reminds us how quickly a peaceful hunt can turn into a battle for survival. Admiralty Island is part of the Tongass National Forest, the largest temperate rainforest in the world. This island, known to the Tlingit people as Kutsnawu, meaning Fortress of the Bears, is home to one of the densest populations of brown bears in North America. The island spans nearly 1,700 square miles, and there's approximately one bear for every single square mile. Its remote location, just 15 miles southwest of Juneau, makes it a prime spot for hunters seeking deer, but it's also a hotbed for bear activity. The terrain is characterized by steep slopes, dense forests of Sitka spruce and western hemlock, and muskeg, a swampy forested area full of thick brush. These conditions create a perfect habitat for both bears and black-tailed deer, which are a common target for hunters. Admiralty Island's climate is wet and cool, with an average rainfall of over 100 inches per year, contributing to the lush vegetation that surrounds the island's wildlife. Aside from brown bears and black-tailed deer, the island also hosts numerous berry species, which include salmonberries, blueberries, and huckleberries. Each berry species has its own fruit-bearing season, which overlaps with each other and provides bears an alternate food source to the deer and hopefully the people. These natural resources not only sustain the island's wildlife, but also draw humans into bear territory, leading to the potential for conflict. On Sunday, October 6, 2024, Amanda Compton, a 44-year-old resident of Juneau, was an experienced hunter who spent countless days in the Alaska wilderness. She often hunted with her longtime friend Nicholas Orr, 45, who is equally familiar with the remote backcountry of Admiralty Island. Both are seasoned outdoors people, carrying rifles and other essential gear, prepared for the challenges of hunting in one of the wildest corners of North America. On this particular day, the pair had set out for what they assumed would be a typical hunt for black-tailed deer. However, even experienced hunters know that no matter how well prepared they are, nature is unpredictable. As they ventured deeper into the muskeg, they had no idea that their path would soon intersect with a protective mother bear. Amanda and Nicholas had been trekking through the dense brush for about an hour and a half, carefully making their way through the difficult terrain of the muskeg. The thick vegetation made it difficult to see far ahead, and this lack of visibility made them cautious. Making noise while moving through it would frighten deer, so the hunters moved as silently and slowly as possible. Without warning, Amanda came face to face with a brown bear sow and her cubs, likely foraging in the area. In an instant, the mother bear charged. In the fraction of a second that it took the sow to cover the ground between them, the hunters had next to no options to adequately defend themselves. As the sow's paws turned through the muddy muskeg, Amanda and Nicholas could only yell and hope the sow would break off her charge in a bluff. Amanda had no time to react beyond instinctively dropping to the ground and curling into a ball, covering her head with her arms, a position taught in bear safety training. The bear's powerful jaws clamped down on Amanda's head, the immense pressure causing a 6-inch laceration on her scalp. As the bear continued its attack, it clawed at her back, leaving deep, painful gashes. Nicholas, who'd been walking just a few feet behind her, lost his footing in the chaos. He quickly regained his balance and fired a shot at the bear, hitting her and causing the animal to retreat. The situation was far from over, however. As Nicholas fired his shot, he noticed a bear cub perched in a nearby tree, likely the reason for the mother bear's aggressive behavior. With her cubs nearby, the sow had been defending her little ones. After the bear retreated, now injured, the hunters assessed Amanda's injuries. She'd sustained significant wounds, including a 6-inch gash on her skull, a 4-inch laceration on the back of her head, and a puncture wound on her hand. Pictures of her wounds would not pass YouTube guidelines, so they've been uploaded for your review to my Patreon account, linked in the video article below this video. Despite the severity of her injuries, the two hunters decided to make their way back to the boat. The return hike took over an hour, and Amanda's condition was critical, though she managed to hold on. Amanda and Nicholas reached their boat and returned to Juneau, where Amanda was taken to the hospital for immediate treatment. Doctors removed a 2-millimeter shard of a bear tooth embedded in her skull, a stark reminder of the very close call she'd just survived. Despite her injuries, Amanda is expected to make a full recovery. The pair's quick thinking and preparedness likely saved her life. As for the bear, after the attack, the area was scouted by wildlife officials. The sow, though injured, had moved far enough away to avoid being found. Her cubs were also not located, but the incident serves as a reminder of the delicate balance between humans and wildlife in Alaska's wilderness. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, link below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes, and the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. Encounters like Amanda's are classified as defensive attacks, which occur when a bear feels its cubs or food source is threatened. Brown bears, particularly sows with cubs, are extremely protective. The dense vegetation of Admiralty Island likely contributed to the suddenness of this encounter, giving the bear little warning of a hunter's approach. Brown bears are also known as coastal grizzlies and can weigh between 600 and 1,500 pounds, and are powerful predators, capable of running up to 35 miles per hour. As Alaska's bear population grows, interactions between bears and humans are becoming more frequent, especially in areas like Admiralty Island, where both share the land. According to the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, brown bear attacks are rare, but tend to occur in areas where humans and bears compete for resources, particularly during the hunting season when bears are also foraging before hibernation. Admiralty Island is home to approximately 1,600 brown bears, with an estimated density of 1 bear per square mile. This makes it one of the most densely populated bear regions in North America. In comparison, bear populations in other parts of Alaska are much lower, making Admiralty Island a hotspot for bear encounters. Over the past decade, Alaska has seen an average of 2 to 3 bear attacks annually, with most being non-fatal. While encounters are not uncommon, fatalities are rare due to the high level of awareness and preparedness among hunters and outdoor enthusiasts. Amanda's encounter, while terrifying, is one of many that showcase the unpredictability of bear behavior, especially when cubs are involved. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Could Amanda and Nicholas have avoided the attack by making more noise as they moved through the dense muskeg? What role does bear awareness training play in preventing serious injuries or fatalities in bear country? Is it realistic to venture into bear territory and not expect a confrontation, or are hunters and hikers playing the odds? I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's story takes us to Lake City, Colorado, a small town in the San Juan Mountains. The elevation of the town is around 8,600 feet high, but the peaks surrounding it soar to over 13,000 feet. The steep valleys between the peaks are crowded with dense forests of lodgepole pine, Engelmann spruce, quaking aspen, and Douglas fir trees. Beautiful flowers from columbine, Indian paintbrush, and lupine display their glory between waves of sagebrush. Beneath the forest canopy, bushes like Oregon grapes, elderberries, gooseberries, and currants offer up their sugary treats in their season. Because the area has a high elevation, summers are cooler than other areas, rarely reaching into the 80s. The winters here are cold and snowy, with temperatures staying below zero for much of the winter. Animals that roam the hills around town include elk and deer, with beautiful songbirds displaying their lovely feathers for birdwatchers. Predators in this area include bobcats, coyotes, cougars, and an ever-growing population of hungry and dangerous black bears. In the early evening of Thursday, October 3rd, 2024, a 74-year-old man whom we'll refer to as Randy was at home with some guests. As the group relaxed in the living room, a loud thud rattled the house. Randy had no idea what the thunderous noise may have been and headed to the rear of the dining room where the noise had come from. Rounding the corner, Randy's eyes were filled with an alarming and dangerous sight. 4 black bears were just inside the sliding glass door at the back of the house. He knew he had left it cracked a few inches to allow fresh air into the home, and quickly determined the loud noise was the door being flung open by the sow. Randy knew he was facing a dangerous sow bear and her 3 large cubs. They were large enough to kill him if he made the wrong move, like startling them or cornering them in a location with no escape. He decided he would use a chair to shepherd the bears back outside and slowly slid it across the floor toward the bears. With the chair positioned between himself and the bears, Randy calmly and slowly moved toward them. He expected them to assess their options, thinking they had entered the home by mistake. Instead of turning around and leaving, the sow took exception to Randy approaching her and her cubs. She lurched the few feet between them in a protective attack on behalf of her cubs. The chair didn't do much in the way of protecting Randy from the sow's anger. She bowled into the man, sending him crashing against the wall. Losing his balance, Randy slipped onto his back, and the angry sow stood over him before he could attempt to regain his feet. Now aware the bears were not going to leave and were attacking him, Randy raised his hands out toward the sow to ward off her claws and jaws. She swatted at his arms, opening up gashes that ran several inches in length down both arms. As he kicked at her, she clamped onto his calf and left 4 painful and bleeding holes where her canine teeth punched through his flesh. She turned her attack to his abdomen and bit into his gut before biting onto the flesh of his shoulder. As she bit him, she swatted Randy's head and neck, gashing his tissues wherever her claws touched. With so many wounds being rendered to his body so quickly, Randy knew if he stayed put, she would kill him. He squirmed his way out from under her and stumbled back toward the rest of his guests. The people ran into a bedroom down the hallway and locked the door behind them, hoping the bears wouldn't continue pursuing Randy or anyone else. Randy and his guests could hear the bears knocking dishes and chairs around near the kitchen as they called 911 for help. They knew Randy needed medical attention immediately, but their primary concern was for their safety. Although the police arrived quickly, the sow had already left the home, but her 3 large cubs remained in the home. Police officers and medics made noise and shouted to drive the bears out of the home before they rendered first aid to Randy's wounds. As the medics worked on slowing Randy's bleeding and assessing his condition, he decided he'd had enough of the whole affair. He suddenly waved off all help and refused to be taken to the hospital by the ambulance. While the medics worked on Randy inside the home, police and wildlife officers used flashlights to locate the bears. After a brief discussion, wildlife officials determined that all 4 bears would need to be euthanized, as they demonstrated clear and dangerous behavior toward humans and had been food conditioned. If the bears weren't conditioned to human sources of food, then it may have been possible for them to return to the forest and live normal lives, but that just wasn't in the cards. One by one, each bear was dispatched by the wildlife officers. Their bodies were collected and taken to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Laboratory in Fort Collins for analysis. Every detail of their health would be examined, and a panel of tests measuring disease would be utilized. This attack was clearly a case of food-conditioned bears invading a home in search of food. The sow didn't attack to protect her cubs as much as she did to protect and defend what she determined was her food source. She and her cubs had an easy escape route, and none of her cubs were threatened by Randy's actions. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes. The $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue producing educational and entertaining content like this. According to CPW Area Wildlife Manager Brandon Diamond, there was no question that those were the bears involved, and unfortunately the decision to euthanize them was necessary for public safety. As he explained, when a bear reaches this level of human habituation, a lot of interaction with people has already happened. This tragic situation highlights the consequences of bears becoming too comfortable around human activity. This incident was the first bear attack in Colorado in 2024, with 6 reported attacks occurring the previous year. Since 1960, there have been 96 reported bear attacks on humans in this state. There are reportedly between 17,000 and 20,000 black bears in Colorado, and the state spans an area of 103,000 square miles. This puts bear density at 1 black bear for every 5 square miles, including urban areas. Bear encounters in areas like Hinsdale County, where Lake City is located, have become increasingly common, with CPW receiving 8 reports of bear activity in the area before this attack. However, many incidents go unreported, with people often discussing them on social media without alerting authorities, as was the case here. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Could this attack have been prevented if the sliding glass door had been securely shut, especially during hyperphagia, when bears are actively foraging? Should communities in bear-prone areas adopt stricter rules on securing garbage and food sources to prevent these tragic encounters? What more can be done to educate the public on reporting bear activity to wildlife authorities before it escalates to a dangerous level? The next time you're enjoying the cool evening air, will you make sure to secure your doors after you finish? I will, without a doubt. I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the remote and rugged Weminuche Wilderness in southwestern Colorado and the towering peaks of the San Juan National Forest. The forest is an expansive wilderness area known for its steep terrain, dense forests, and abundant wildlife. The Weminuche Wilderness, located within the forest, offers some of the most remote and pristine backcountry experiences in the state. It's a prime spot for grazing allotments, where sheep and cattle herders manage livestock in the high country during the summer months. Elevation in the forest ranges from 5,000 feet to over 14,000 feet, which creates a geography dotted with alpine lakes and crystal clear springs. The Continental Divide splits the Rocky Mountains in the San Juans, creating a watershed that runs from coast to coast. The San Juan consists of beautiful forests of ponderosa pine, Engelmann spruce, subalpine fir, Douglas fir, and quaking aspen. The ground floor of the forest is covered with berry bushes such as wild raspberry, thimbleberry, huckleberry, and serviceberry that offer up their sweet and nutritious fruits in their various seasons. Animals that roam the valleys include elk, moose, and mule deer, with bighorn sheep and mountain goats balancing on the peaks. The most dangerous members of the forest are predators like bobcats, coyotes, cougars, and black bears. This part of Colorado, although beautiful, is also home to predators like the aforementioned black bears, which roam the wilderness in search of food, particularly during late summer and fall, when they are preparing for hibernation. Each bear needs to average consuming 20,000 calories each day of the year that they are not hibernating to put on enough fat for survival. This makes them opportunistic and voracious consumers of anything from carrion to the young of other animals, from mushrooms to roots, and from berries to flowers. The abundance of sheep and other livestock in the area make it an attractive spot for opportunistic bears, setting the stage for human-wildlife conflict. Colorado has a long history of bear-human conflict, especially in areas where bears and humans coexist, near natural food sources or livestock. In recent years, the state has seen a rise in bear sightings and reports. In 2021, CPW reported more than 4,000 bear incidents and 2,400 bear sightings across the state. These incidents range from bears raiding garbage bins to more severe situations like this one, where a bear attacks livestock or humans. Just after 3 a.m. on Tuesday, September 11th, 2023, a 35-year-old sheep herder, whom we'll call Dawn, awoke to a disturbance at his camp near Lemon Reservoir, approximately 23 miles northeast of Durango. The shepherd could hear the sound of the sheep bleating and running as the guard dogs barked their alarm. He knew it could only be a handful of possibilities, and grabbed his .30-30 rifle as he stumbled into the dark. Beneath the moonlit sky, Don could make out his sheep dashing about and could see the Great Pyrenees dogs that protected the herd chasing a shadow. The guard dogs were not intimidating this persistent black bear, as it continually alternated between chasing the sheep and swatting at the dogs. It was rare that he would have to chase away a bear, but generally they would leave as soon as he appeared, if not before. But this bear was different. It was much more determined than other bears, possibly even desperate. Don knew he had to take action, or he may lose his entire herd in a panicked rush around the mountain. He drew down on the shadow and fired at what he estimated was its rib cage. Only about 30 yards away from the man, the bear was sent toppling to the ground, only to roll back to its feet and directly toward the shepherd. It is terrifying enough to see an angry bear running toward you in the daytime, but at night, the shadowy figure floating across the ground at a speed that boggles your mind must be even more so. As the bear approached Don, it launched itself into the air and tackled him to the ground. Don felt the crushing weight of the bear as it pressed him to the ground. As he screamed and twisted to get away, the bear bit onto his hip and punched holes as big as his fingers through his flesh. As he squirmed in pain, the bear clamped its jaws onto his arm and crunched through bones and muscle. Moving to finish Don off, its final attack focused on his head. The bear drove its teeth through his scalp and tore deep and painful gashes. It isn't clear if the dogs drove the bear off or the entire situation forced it to change its mind. Either way, the bear disappeared into the night, leaving Don bleeding, in pain, and fading in and out of consciousness. After a few minutes, Don gathered his wits and began pulling himself across the ground toward his tent. Using his cell phone, he contacted one of his relatives and relayed his dire circumstances. Don's relative contacted authorities and reported the bear attack on the shepherd. Emergency services were notified and rushed to his camp. Upon arriving at the sheep camp, an initial assessment of Don's injuries labeled his condition as serious. A medical helicopter arrived soon after his bleeding was under control. The flight took him to Mercy Regional Medical Center in Durango before he was sent to a hospital in Grand Junction for more specialized care. While he was at Mercy Regional, wildlife professionals gathered DNA evidence from bear saliva on his clothes to identify the bear who had attacked him. Comparison to samples collected at snares and culvert traps they planned to place in the area would ensure they would find and kill the culprit while not killing uninvolved bears. While Don was being ferried to the hospital, wildlife officers converged on his camp. They located a blood trail leading away from it and brought in bloodhounds to follow the wounded bear. Along with the blood trail, they found Don's rifle and 2 dead sheep. The bear's blood trail led them for an incredible 70 miles through rugged wilderness before they cornered it near the Florida River. It was humanely dispatched with little doubt of its guilt given its blood trail. Its motives were purely predatory regarding the sheep, if not Don as well, as it was a male and was not defending cubs. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes. And the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. A necropsy was performed on the bear's carcass. It was found to be an 8-year-old male of a healthy weight, around 250 pounds. On its claws, DNA evidence from Don and the sheep it had killed was collected for confirmation. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. What could Don have done to prevent or avoid this attack? Should sheep herders in bear country have more protection, like electric fencing or bear deterrence? And with the rising number of bear incidents in Colorado, what steps can be taken to balance conservation efforts with public safety? I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.
Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. We'll help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country.